enemy of the state.
Yo, this is Millennial Sport Talk, and this is episode 3. We're covering Premier League recap of match day 2. So, obviously, the big story is United dropped points to Brighton. Uh, fucking bastards. You know how I think you've all seen the headlines by now. Everybody's Mourinho out at this point, but that is what we expected going into the season. We didn't bring much talent in. It didn't look like the board backed Josie with a lot of the transfers. And how else do you expect Josie Mourinho to get sacked at United? He has to lose in order to get sacked. That's the thing that's funny is I don't know what all this uproar is about when it was expected. I mean, a lot of people predicted he wasn't going to finish the season. I predicted this is his last season. So I'm not that all alarmed at all. It's one game, one match. Let's just be honest. It's 3 points we should have had, but it's not as if you can't win the league by losing the second match day of the season when you haven't had any time together. You're on the road. Um, it's a match. It happens. It happens in soccer, and I think it's way overblown just because it's Manchester United. The media loves to vilify and just blow every little thing up. So I do think it's working. I do think that right now, I mean, this is a club that appears to be in shambles. There's a lot of people who are frustrated with what's going on. There's a lot of people who want a change in management, not just Mourinho. We're talking up to Ed Woodward and the board, and they've been displeased with what they've seen for some time, and I don't think they've ever been on board with the Glazers. So nothing was going to make them happy and approve of the Glazers, and now this is another excuse for them to tear us apart and try to start and break up the biggest club in the world. So um, no fret, 3 points behind the lead. We have match day 3. You got Tottenham Spurs coming up. Yes, City won. City won 6-1, a net 6 in chill. So they had a great day. Liverpool won away 2-0. Crystal Palace. Everybody won. Everything happened as expected. Chelsea put 3 goals to put away Arsenal at the end with Marcus Alonso. And who did I forget? Spurs won as well. So, uh, yeah, I mean, right now all eyes are on United because we're the only team besides Arsenal who we knew Arsenal was going to lose. So, any Arsenal fans talking junk about United, it's not time for you to talk junk. You haven't won a game. You haven't won a game, and you might not win next week. We don't know when Arsenal's going to win. Arsenal is probably not going to finish in top 4 in contention for Champions League again this year. So, yeah, Arsenal, you're really looking pretty bad right now. I would not open your mouth. Keep those mouths closed. But as for everybody else, you already know United will be back. United will win get matches, and United will finish top 4. So chirp it up now. Chirp it up now because this is going to be the best time for you to chirp it up. And we'll see what we have going. So one news article that I read was a potential Ed Woodward out banner, which Ed Woodward, if you don't know already, is the CEO of operations for Manchester United. And yeah, he's been responsible for the hiring and firings of managers and approving of transfers and securing those funds. So that's probably the biggest issue that we've had is that Ed Woodward is not a football mind by trade. Let's just say that he's known for his specialties in investment banking and financial operations. So, not exactly the guy you really want pulling the trigger on deals or saying yes or saying no. He's clearly good with money and making money. He is good at, as Manchester United just eclipsed what $4 billion of estimated value. So, there's a banner from the supporters are planning to wave that. I don't know how big the banner is, but it will miss the Tottenham match and be ready for the Burnley match. So we'll see what to make of that. But the last time I've heard of a banner being flown was when they were getting David Moyes out. So I think it will be effective if they actually go through with it. I do think Ed Woodward is a good start because Josie Marino, as much as I don't necessarily support his style of football. he has been able to get results for the team better than the last two managers. And while there are other candidates that I would support, Ed Woodward is probably the first guy that needs to go before Josie, and then whoever you bring in next, let him decide on Josie's future. I do think that future does need to be sacked, but both of them are going to get swept up under out of Manchester United's positions very soon. And I think it's you got to start right at Ed Woodward's door because he's the guy responsible for hiring the last three managers who now we're getting ready to sack that third one. Consistency is good for a club. We want consistency, but Marino for 3 years. This third year is I don't want to say anything back. It's too early. It's too early to say. The only thing we know for certain is that you get 150 million pounds of funding from finishing second in the Premier League. And what do you do with it? You buy Fred and fullback that I forget, Diego Dalot. I haven't seen him play. And a goalkeeper. I mean, where is the investment into the club? I don't see it. I think everybody knows we needed some players at each line. We got the midfielder. We didn't get the center back. We didn't get a center back, and we didn't get an extra winger. A right winger is what we really needed. And at this point, I mean, you're Manchester United. You just pay what you got to pay. Pay what you got to pay. Get somebody. And people were disgusted to hear names like Willian. A lot of people were keen on Bell, complaining about his injury prognosis. But guess what? They were bodies, and we didn't get anybody. Nobody. So that's all on Woodward. Jose had the players he had in mind that he wanted to buy. And because we didn't buy anybody, we couldn't sell anybody. I don't think Martial, people love Martial, and I was on Martial's his ship, but his performance was abysmal. It was abysmal. I mean, obviously, he didn't get a lot of service done to him, but ultimately, we've seen him ruin services before. We've seen him for years now play up and down, and we just don't have time for that. United. I mean, he will be a great player, but we don't have time to let him waste 2, 3 more years before he figures it out. It's just not going to work. It's going to cost people jobs, and ultimately, that's why you need to make it cost his job. And we need to get some value for him while we still can, because if he doesn't figure it out, now his entire value is going to plummet even further than what it is. So, Ed Woodward out, great sign, uh, no pun intended, and hopefully we'll see that in the coming weeks. Okay, so now we have our Manchester United and Premier League expert on the phone, Dwayne. We just want to ask you a few questions regarding this start. There's I would ask you questions about Chelsea, Arsenal, City, but the real topic of this week really is United, as it is most weeks. But United right now is in a flux at the club. We've heard rumors of an Ed Woodward out banner that's going to be flown over the stadium in one of the next games at Burnley. And then of course, we know the issues with Pogba, Mourinho. What do you make of all this, and what's the course of the club? What action should we go forward with next?
Well, first off, I think the fans are directing their anger at the wrong person. Ed Woodward is not the one that's having United play this style at the moment. Ed
But
Woodward.
well,
Oh,
okay, so I agree with what you're saying. The style isn't necessarily losing the game, but Ed Woodward knew about this style heading into the season, and he did not get rid of Jose Mourinho. He did not give Jose Mourinho any funds or to help secure the signings that Jose wanted. So he does have some implication in this, in that he could have fired Jose if he wasn't going to back him, or he could have backed him if he's not going to sack him.
right. See, it almost makes it seem like Ed Woodward was basically, he had no idea what he wanted to do himself in the summer, him and the board, with, as you said, not wanting to back Jose, but at the same time not firing him. And if I'm not mistaken, they actually gave Jose a 2-year extension earlier this year. So, yeah, you're right. I can see why the fans can display that sign coming forward in the next match. However, I still think the fans need to, I guess, not necessarily demonstrate towards Ed Woodward, but I mean the board may be to blame as well because I mean from when Sir Alex left, we and David Gill, because don't forget, David Gill and Sir Alex Ferguson worked hand in hand with getting all of our recruitments over the years. It almost makes you seem like Woodward and Mourinho, they're not on the same page in general. So, if anything, the fans' anger needs to be directed towards both of them at the same time instead of just towards one or the other.
Yeah, I agree, and I think we have a little bit of closing in the doors in the I guess the walls, not doors, because the media has really been lighting Josie on fire more so than the fans. Fans definitely. I've looked at a lot of Manchester United blogs around the web, and 99.9% of them want Josie out as well. So, I mean, just as a board, if you're the board decision and you see all this going on in your club, I mean, you're 2 games into the season. What are you going to do for the rest of the season? What do you do anything now? How do you get some type of calmness restored back to the club?
I think that basically members of the board, Woodward, Mourinho, and a few of the Manchester United players all need to have a sit down and basically just have an air out session, just air out excuse me, because I mean it's clear that there is tension all around this club, from Pogba to Mourinho to Woodward to even French players that Mourinho might have dissed by saying that he needs better players, basically. Because let's face it, if you're saying those things, you're not gonna have a happy team when they come back from summer vacation. So I mean, ultimately, it just goes back to Mourinho needs to really just he needs to lift his players up in the media instead of tearing them down. And honestly, it's going to take some of the players maybe telling him that specifically. So
Yeah.
yeah, they just need to have a coming together meeting, air it all out on the table, and just get things off their chest. Because I feel like that's what's been one of these issues. Like people just bottling in um, grievances that they may have, and that's translated onto the field as we saw on on Saturday against, no, the game was Sunday. On Sunday against
Yeah.
not Leicester, Brighton. So,
Yeah. Speaking of the match, I want to get your take on the Golden Boy, Anthony Martial. He had his first start of the season. What did you make of that performance?
he was very lively in the first 30 minutes or so, but the problem with Martial throughout his United career, he wasn't consistent, and he eventually faded away during the match. Now, what I did like was Mourinho throwing on Rashford and Martial together with Lukaku, but by then it was kind of really too late because by then we had given up 2 crap goals, and we just weren't creating enough chances to get back in the game. But
Yeah,
go ahead.
I just want to stop you at the word too late because I mean I think all of them were in there at the start of the second half. The Lingard and Rashford were really subbed in. And I think like you said, that Lukaku, Lingard, Rashford, and Martial all played together for at least, and Pogba too for what 15 minutes. At least 15 minutes to like the 60th minute, I think, is when Martial was taken off. So, I mean, 15 minutes of that, you don't think that should be able to be enough to generate a goal?
Well, the results was in the game on Saturday. It apparently wasn't.
Yeah, and I think that's pretty telling, Kevin. That we have so many managers at home that insist that Martial. The problem's not with Martial, but I think there's blame on both sides, and realistically, there isn't a right answer at this point. It's just up. It is to a degree. It is up. It is up to the players. Um, I admire some of the Pep Guardiola for the job he's done, but let's just be honest. Those players are performing at a high level. Yeah, thanks to Pep Guardiola, but he's not on the pitch forcing them to do it. They still have to show up every day, no matter if they didn't get any time the game before. They're not sulking on the bench because they didn't play the match before or the two matches before. They come in and they play and they make great use of it. So I think some of those attitudes uh, that can be handled within the player himself.
Yeah, and one thing about City as well, going to that point, those players, you can tell they enjoy playing under Pep because Pep actually encourages them on the sideline. Sure, he gets in their grill if they mess up or do something he doesn't like, but ultimately he's providing both the positive and negative reinforcement. Mourinho, he does it sometimes, but it's more negative than positive, and it doesn't matter whether you're a grown man, you're a kid playing, you're going to respond to what kind of reinforcement you get.
And I agree with that. I agree completely wholeheartedly. And I think a good point that isn't brought up enough, which I don't want to make an excuse, but it is a factor that players around Premier League don't deal with unless you come to United, and that's the negative press. You know, when you get constant and consistent negative press day after day, year after year, you see it seeping into our players. It gets into their head. It makes it more difficult for a manager to have control over his team when there's always people and cameras and reporters constantly undermining his efforts.
Uh-huh.
So
that's one. That just lets you know that United is the biggest club in England because the media outlets they don't have a story unless it's something about United.
Yeah, and the only player on City that I think gets criticized, overly criticized, is Raheem Sterling. He's probably the only City player that would face a somewhat similar amount of criticism. Not as much because clearly when you're winning, that criticism doesn't hit home as much, and they just won the Premier League title. But he does get a lot of unnecessary publicity over silly items that don't matter which way or the other.
I have a theory on that, but that's of course for another podcast.
All right, all right. Well, again, thanks for the call, Dwayne, and we'll keep you in the loop as we march towards match day 3 and forward in the Premier League.
All right, sounds good. Thanks for having me.
All right, no problem. So as I stated before, United plays Tottenham's Hotspur at Old Trafford on Monday. That's going to be the game of the week easily, especially given the circumstances that the Manchester United Football Club is at this moment in time. Besides that game, we have Liverpool going against Brighton Hove Albion, and I bet you I would put $100 that they score at least 3 goals. At least 3 goals. I wouldn't be in least bit surprised to see 5 up there. That's just typical of what to expect after United lose or barely beat an opponent or draw. If somebody else gets them, that team. I'm not going to give any excuses, but for whatever reason, they do not put the same type of performance up and they lose. Then we have Arsenal at West Ham. Arsenal at home to West Ham. They should win that, but that's not a guarantee with the way Arsenal's been playing. City goes away again to Wolverhampton Wanderers. Wolves, no upset here. City will secure the 3 points. And then, of course, Chelsea has Newcastle United. I love Newcastle United in this match. Chelsea was a little shaky at the end of that Arsenal match, and Newcastle will come away with 3 points. A full 3 points is my prediction for that match. And I think that's about covers all the Premier matches. Southampton, they hold Leicester City. Leicester's probably going to come. That's a push. I don't know. Draw. I can't really flip heads or tails for that one. So I'll just leave that as is. And Everton versus Bournemouth. Again, flip a coin, push on that one. So those are my predictions for this week. And I'll see you again next week.